Hi guys, welcome back to Force Multiplier TV. Hope you're all keeping well. Quick video today. Let's address the Brock Purdy San Francisco 49ers quarterback contract situation. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one in the States because you hear a lot of, I would say, controversial opinion. I would say that it's very complex because of the market with quarterbacks in the US. I suppose that if I was to lead with the fact that in general terms, it's widely considered that the likes of Trevor Lawrence, Tua, I would argue that Prescott have all been vastly overpaid based on their performances. They're obviously to varying degrees. For me, that Prescott got overpaid based on the fact he'd not done anything in the playoffs, and not that much in crucial key games. And so did he warrant that pay? I would say no. Then you're looking at Trevor Lawrence. Was he being overpaid because of the situation with the organization more than his performances and talent? And there's a lot of hype on Trevor Lawrence and not so much sort of substance to really back that up. Obviously, I think that that's starting to bear fruit a bit. And Tua is a combination of all the elements, really: performances, health issues, and did he get overpaid because of the he has talent, but does he have enough? I found it quite bizarre. As much as I feel sorry for him in terms of the health element, I did find that was quite a bizarre one in terms of him getting that contract. And so you look at the way the marketplace has evolved, and you've got the likes of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes that have obviously taken team friendly decisions in terms of their contracts to really enable them to keep talent, with them essentially earning the money on the back end, and both in terms of the team, but also known full well at the back end they're going to get endorsements from success. They're going to get TV stuff from success, and so they're playing a completely different game both on and off the pitch in terms of legends of that era, and they haven't milked like their franchises dry in terms of their immediate salary to the detriment of keeping talent. So really, provided that really to put a bit of sort of context and landscape as to sort of the quarterback market. It is a weird market where players are to some extent getting overpaid based on supply and demand more than necessarily the quality of the product of the output. And that's not saying the output's horrendous. It's just saying is it up to the level of what they're being paid? And I think that's where it gets lost in translation a little bit in terms of just because if you're looking to buy a house, just because there's only four houses on the market, it doesn't mean that just because you want 500,000 for the house, because there's only a few, doesn't mean you have to pay the 500,000. You could choose to move to a different area or find other solutions, or even build your own house. And what I mean by that analogy, you could choose to use the draft rather than necessarily go and spend ridiculous amounts of money. You could use a bit like what San Francisco have done. San Francisco have used the draft, and a lot of clubs have tried that method now, which is bring the young quarterback through the draft, then surround them with sort of the Avengers, to use the sort of modern sort of scenario over in the US. Or surround them with Avengers and hope that the combination of the low contract for the quarterback and the superstars around them catapult them to success. Yet to see it work, though, that is the thing, is that it's worked. As close as it's worked has been with Purdy. But apart from that, essentially, the quality quarterbacks, the very best quarterbacks, are the ones that have won so far. So far it's just been Mahomes and Brady. Then you had Burrow in one arm, and my problem with the situation with Brock Purdy at the moment is that to suddenly for people to say, and I know some people have been saying it last year as well, but suddenly for people to say he doesn't deserve He doesn't deserve a contract. I'm not even sure they say that. Well, no, they are. They are. For people to say he doesn't deserve the contract or they should wait a year or franchise him is completely different to they should offer him 40 million or 45 million or 50 million. Look, should Brock Purdy be better paid than Trevor Lawrence and Tua? So let's put the questions in line. By rights, is Brock Purdy better than Tua and Trevor Lawrence? Yes. And if you don't think that, frankly, you're an idiot. You know, I don't care what you've seen in college. I haven't seen anything from Trevor Lawrence or Tua to say they're anywhere near as good as Brock Purdy, and so that's just craziness. And you got no hope for you if you believe that. And they show nothing, no evidence whatsoever. You're just believing some weird potential that hasn't existed so far. And so, look, it may do, but look, you're just investing in some ridiculous amount of talent that hasn't been shown. So for me, in many ways, he's earned the right to be paid more than them. The quarterback market has been the next man up scenario continually over and over and over. So whoever's come up next has constantly evolved and gone up with the pricing. If suddenly Brock Purdy, let's just say, gets offered a contract of, let's just say, 40 million or 45 million or 100 million over 3 years guaranteed. And obviously, it's a lot of money. And I hope he gets a phenomenal contract. He's earned it. And just doesn't sit right with me the fact that there's players that have been dramatically overpaid with far less talent that have achieved far less. But it's okay, for them to have it. And it's not okay for him to have it. Should he be, should he be paid more than them because they've been overpaid or because he's warranted it? I think this is where the it's a tough situation because the model that obviously San Francisco want to do is pay the quarterback less. Obviously, everybody would love to do that, and then surround the whole team with talent. Some of that element's gonna have to change for San Francisco now. Um, I think that you go with Brock, and to those who doubt him, and then look at his performance against Detroit and go, "Oh, that's why we don't pay him." Hmm. In all due respect, the first half was pretty phenomenal by Brock, and one of the interceptions was great defensive play. One of them was an horrific throw. Okay, I'll give you that one. But in all due respect, and Josh Allen has done plenty of rubbish throws for interceptions. He's had games with 4 interceptions, yet nobody ever talks about it. Lamar Jackson's lost 5 games this year and thrown plenty of interceptions. Nobody talks about it and fumbles. Joe Burrow's, has done the same and lost loads of games through his own, as much as his genius, his own problems as well. And Mahomes has thrown loads of interceptions. And so I'm not putting Brock Purdy anywhere near. You've got your tier one, Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Stafford. I'm going to put they're my 5. Stafford up there. Tier two, Hurts, Purdy, um, Herbert. Although Herbert for me hasn't achieved that much. Equally, his efficiency level's high. Goff, not sure where to put Darnold, but I think you have to put him in there based on this year. You wouldn't have previous to this year, but then you can't discount this year. Baker Mayfield would be level 2 as well. And the thing is, a lot of people say, well, Baker's on 35 million. It's like, yeah, but Baker also hasn't actually gone to the Super Bowl. And then it's like Purdy gets discounted because well, his achievements last year don't count as much because Christian McCaffrey was amazing. Hmm. Last time I checked, Tom Brady's achievements aren't discounted because Rob Gronkowski was ridiculous. Or you know, his achievements aren't discounted because their defense was phenomenal, or because Adam Vinatieri was phenomenal, or like Patrick Mahomes' achievements aren't discounted because he's played with Travis Kelce his entire career, or he had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, for some of the success, or for a ridiculously good defense, or for having one of the best coaches, or it's people have very selective ways in which they form their views. And it's not me saying that Brock Purdy's the second coming of any of the top five. He's not. But I think he deserves a far larger amount of respect put on him because I don't know where it's like, well, oh God, he can't be paid 60 million. That's literally like slate him at every turn. No, the minutes like if he has a good first half, yeah, but it's all the system. It doesn't mean he didn't do nothing. God forbid anyone execute a system like phenomenally. That just makes you if you can execute a system phenomenally in a first half, that just makes you average, right? As if like the majority of the quarterbacks in the league actually execute a system phenomenally. The vast majority don't. On that front, like you look at and it's not a good analogy. I'm a big Chicago Bears fan, but the Chicago Bears would give you right arm for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's better than Caleb. I'm not saying Caleb won't be better than him, but like, I'd much rather take a proven Purdy over like some potential that may or may not materialize in terms of Caleb. It's like, yeah, the upside may be vast. But the upside may never happen. I'll take a proven quantity over potential upside any day of the week. And it's just like there's the same thing that happened with Minnesota. Like they've obviously got the quarterback they got with the draft. Sam Darnold's performing lights out. But yeah, but Sam Darnold won't be the starter next year, even though he's performing ridiculous. Like, yeah, but how many playoff games does he have to win for maybe Sam Darnold to get the contract that he deserves, and then he'll be the number one? And yeah, maybe if he gets to the Super Bowl, I think that'll be enough. You have a laugh at you. So you'd much rather take a potential that hasn't done nothing. I think it's JJ McCarthy, isn't it? You'd much rather take the potential of somebody that's done nothing over somebody that's had given you a phenomenal season. And I get it. If they go out in the first round or the second round, whenever the first game is, then I don't really know how you play it out on that one because it's not phenomenal success. It's a great season for Minnesota, but for me, getting to the conference game would be great success. Or knocking out one of the top teams would still be great success. Um, I would run it back with Darnold myself next year, on that front, and I don't know, give him a 2-year contract for I don't know how much money it would cost you. This is the problem, but give him a 2-year contract. Ask McCarthy to sit under him again. See if basically a little bit like Rodgers with Brett Favre. It can never be a bad thing for high quality. It's not like McCarthy's the second coming of Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers in their peak, or Peyton Manning. Is that you don't know what he is at this moment in time. It's not going to be a bad thing for him to sit underneath Sam Darnold for one more year. There's no urgency to it for me. But we'll see how that contract goes. But obviously circling back to Purdy, be careful what you wish for. I think on this front, I saw some ludicrous today where somebody was suggesting, oh, they could go and get Kirk Cousins. Let me sort of think on that one. Right, the Kirk Cousins that has basically been horrendous this year. I like Kirk Cousins as a person. Obviously did really well at Minnesota, but are we talking about the same Kirk Cousins that's had a nightmare season? Worse than Purdy. Pretty sure we are. So the logic is let's bring in a veteran who's going to be finishing a few years, but on the cheap, which he won't be on the cheap. But on the cheap rather than give Purdy the contract, even though Purdy's in theory going to get better, even if he doesn't hit the tier one. And he's taking it to a Super Bowl, and he's got the buy-in from the other players. I think the Kirk Cousins one is the stupidest suggestion ever. And then the suggestion that they could get maybe Sam Darnold, but then the 49ers already had Sam Darnold. I know he wasn't playing at the same level as he has for Minnesota this year. Didn't they have him in like training camp or something where he played underneath Purdy, and essentially Purdy outbattled him to win the thing. So it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, essentially, Sam Darnold's done this year what sort of Brock Purdy did last year. Difference is Brock Purdy got him to a Super Bowl, and as much as you can love Christian McCaffrey, ultimately it was Brock Purdy to people like Brendan Ayuk. Brock Purdy to Ayuk, it was Brock Purdy to um, that really instigated the comeback wins in the playoffs. It's Brock Purdy that really pushed them on in the Super Bowl. And so I think there's a lot of he was very good, but no, it wasn't really down to him. Yeah, that can't be possible. It's like I get the fact that in the fourth quarter this year, he's thrown some picks. Sure. I've seen players that are way past their prime or players that are overhyped, or whether it's a Dak Prescott, whether it's a Rodgers past his prime, or whoever it is. I've seen plenty of players throw picks. I've seen Lamar throw picks. I've seen loads of players throw picks. It's just I think the difference with Brock is that his highs aren't as high and his lows are the same as everybody else. I think that is the truth. I think it really is. I think people report on the highest of the highs of other quarterbacks, and then the class is Superman. And then because he doesn't really have those, he has high efficiency games. So, for instance, in the Detroit game, that I thought was a phenomenal first half. He was really on track for a great game. Were they throwing too much? Yeah. I mean, I always think San Francisco are a balanced team when they're at their best. And I think when Brock starts throwing almost like Brett Favre here, there, and everywhere, a bit like Aaron Rodgers as well. I think when you start throwing too much, the chances of you being intercepted, it doesn't take rocket science increase. The more you throw, the more chance eventually you're going to get intercepted. And he did. First one, rubbish throw, get it, hands up. Second one was good defensive play, two interceptions, not great, and ruined it. Didn't completely ruin, but it ruined for me what was a very good performance. Has he had other games this year where he's thrown some bad throws? Sure. I mean, I could think at least four games where he's thrown some really bad passes. The flip side to that, I can think of at least 6 or 7 games where his scrambles have kept them in the game, where his throws have kept them in the game. Um, I think that people need to remember he's carried this team this year. Him and George Kill have been the team. I don't think the defense has been very good all season. I think they've been injury played all season. I think that I didn't turn up. It didn't turn up and was injured. I don't think Debo's been very good all season. I think he's had a couple of moments here and there, but not very good. Um, I can't think anybody. McCaffrey's not been there all season, basically. I can't think anybody outside of Purdy and Kittle that's performing on the offensive side. Yeah, as I say, I think that maybe deserves a bit more credit from this season. He ain't going to get it because everybody expects him to get the Super Bowl. But when everyone sort of sits back and says, "Well, if he was worth anything, he would have got them. He would have carried them on his own." Right? Like like all the other quarterbacks that have all this amount of injuries that are playing with like fourth string running backs. That are playing with like literally no receivers. They're playing with like the key people on the offensive line missing. Um, and he's only in the infancy of his career to some extent. I think there's leniency that's given to players like Dak Prescott that he hasn't earned anywhere near the amount of leniency he gets. Josh Allen has had poor seasons and he gets a lot of leniency. Lamar Jackson's dreadful in the playoffs. and he's had a lot of leniency. There's players that like Joe Burrow, for instance. He's a lot. There's players that get far more leniency because of their highest of highs. Yet somebody like Brock Purdy, who's actually gone to a conference game, got injured. He's gone to a Super Bowl, played phenomenal all season. Played. He was the force multiplier in the playoffs for them. He was the one in the Super Bowl for them, and went toe to toe with Mahomes as well as Burrow and Allen have ever done in their entire career. There ain't many players that have gone toe to toe with Mahomes. Brady, Burrows, Allen, and Purdy. Who else? Hurts. Ironically, and Hurts gets slated as well. Nuts, isn't it, really? You'd think it's like everybody who's gone toe to toe with Mahomes. No, they haven't. I've not seen a Justin Herbert go toe to toe with him. I've not even seen Lamar Jackson do it that much. For all the skills and hype of Lamar Jackson, he has a lot of skills. But equally, at the moment, until he shows up in the playoffs, it doesn't really mean you can have all the MVPs in the world, but the time to talk turkeys in the playoffs in the NFL. And so stats are for show, playoffs for dough. Like in NFL, you get paid loads of dough regardless. But stats are for show, playoffs are for dough. And show me how good you really are in the playoffs. So time will tell what San Francisco really offer Purdy. I think he's earned a contract. Well, of course he's in a contract, and there's at least 15 other teams that would bite your arm off for Brock Purdy. And if you think they're not, then you're forgetting. I could run for a whole list of teams that don't have quarterbacks even remotely close to the talent of Brock Purdy that would gladly pay $55 million a year for him. And if you can't find him, then you're forgetting who's actually playing in the NFL and just focusing on sort of 5 or 6 teams because there's plenty of them that have got horrendous quarterbacks, or quarterbacks that are nowhere near his level. So we shall see, guys. On that front, I wanted to really sort of pick up on the Purdy one because there's many facets to it. You've got players that don't have his ability that have been overpaid, and then is he being punished because of their performance? I think so. Is he being punished because he's being compared to the top 5 quarterbacks? I do think so. Is he being recognised for his talents this year? No, I don't think he is. I think people gladly dismiss all the problems that the 49ers have had this year. And for as much as it may suit a narrative on your analysis of Brock Purdy and his worth, the bottom line is that if you think he's not worth £60 million, on your head bit, I'm not saying that he is necessarily worth 60. I'm saying that if I've seen 3 or 4 other quarterbacks that aren't as good as him get paid that level, then I'm damn sure he's worth at least 45 to 50. Baker Mayfield's worth 45 to 50. I mean, that is the nuts thing about the market. You've got players that aren't worth it getting paid. And then players, Purdy's, not struggling because they're in negotiations, but Purdy's obviously looking to get what he's worth, and then you got other players like Daniel Jones that does get paid, and then yeah, I mean it is life and times, isn't it? I find it a little bit nuts when players that are getting paid haven't achieved the success. So somebody gets you to a conference game and then a Super Bowl gets criticized and has to fight tooth and nail to get a proper decent contract. It's all relative. I'm talking in the context of quarterbacks, not in terms of real life outside of it. If somebody who's done a conference and a Super Bowl, and regardless of the Avengers, they're amazing. It's all because of this. Regardless, he was the one that actually carried him in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. I don't care what was around him; it was him. And before him, Ayuk wasn't anybody really. And so I love McCaffrey and all the talent around him, but equally, it was Purdy who was the star of the show in the playoffs for them, equally, if not more, than McCaffrey, and definitely was. Well, I think in the overall arc of the playoffs, he was the edge of McCaffrey on that for me, anyway. And so I just find it a very fascinating story how it's okay to pay some because you think their athletic prowess has more potential, although they've achieved nothing. It's okay to pay ones that are great in the regular season, but are awful in the playoffs. But doesn't matter. If your stats say you're amazing in the regular season, that must mean you're you're phenomenal. That you must be paid 60 million pound a year because of what? Like yeah, you've achieved great. It's a bit like in the football Premier League. If you played well for 30 of the 38 games but didn't win the league title, you wouldn't be paid as if you won the league title. You wouldn't. You'd get paid. You wouldn't be paid as if you won the title. Um, and I find it just odd how like people wax lyrical. I know it's a team game, but people wax lyrical on how great your talent is. But if you then fold when the crunch moments happen, and the crucial moments happen in the season, that's a major slight on your ability. It'd be like me in business terms, only closing small clients. And then the minute I have a meeting with a large global multinational client with a CEO, never converting any one of them, then I wouldn't be expecting to have the same amount of money as I would for generating the larger clients. And that's what I feel like is the weird sort of complexity of the NFL, where people get paid for the brands, the talent, the TV ratings, the show, as it were. Um, and I'm all about the Super Bowl trophy. And maybe call me old school, call me naive. It's all about winning the Super Bowl, and I'll take a Tom Brady and success, and a Patrick Mahomes and success over the flash. Flash and razzle dazzle doesn't mean nothing if you don't end up with a trophy at the end. And maybe you like that. Maybe you like 70 points to 60 and no trophy. I'll take a 10-6 and a trophy, frankly. I think one of the things that makes the NFL is all facets of the game. And elements such as mindset, elements such as the grind, elements such as delivering under pressure, delivering against the best defense, delivering against in playoffs when it's a completely more different game. The intensity's higher, the weather's harder, the scheming is better because it's more focused on that individual team. It goes up for me. The playoffs go up about another four notches from the regular season, and that's why a playoff performance carries far more weight than at least five of the regular season games for me. Because at least four or five of the games in a season, look, every game means something. But if a team's on a really bad run or they got injuries or whatever, you could pick three or four wins up sometimes without doing anything that great. Whereas in the playoffs, it's the best of the best. Like they were saying in basketball, games get officiated differently in basketball. It's a lot harder, a lot tighter. So yeah, so then analyze teams when it's in those games, not in regular season games. And I think that Purdy deserves a bit more credit for what he's done under the he's performed at his absolute best in the highest moments. Yeah, he's getting lambasted for okay, he hasn't played phenomenal this season compared to last season, where last season he's been classed as a fluke or Mr. Irrelevant or this can't be true or it's all the talent around me. And then this season it's like, well, he's failing in the fourth, he's thrown an interception, and he could have done 400 yards in the game. And if he threw an interception in the last minute, nobody cares about what he's done for the rest of the game. Yeah, if any other quarterback does that, they go, "Oh yeah, no, one of the that happens." It's like, no, I get the fact he's made some mistakes, you know, this year. He has. Well, so's the head coach. Head coach has made mistakes this year, plenty of mistakes. Field goal kickers made, the kickers made plenty of mistakes. The defense has been awful. The offense has been riddled with injuries. It's like, you show me something in the 49ers team that has had a good season. It's just fact, though, isn't it? It's just like, well, it's all well and good sort of picking apart Purdy if it suits your narrative. Maybe remind yourself of the whole team and everybody from the head coach. Okay, well, if you want to say Purdy's had a bad season, then Shannon's had the head coach had a bad season. The defense has been awful. The offense has been crippled. There you go. If you want to throw him under the bus, you can throw them all under the bus. I don't think Bosa's been phenomenal this year, although he's in injuries. It's just reality. Debo's been awful this year. And I know it is because of the money, and it is because the contract of 50 to 60 million. It's just, we can't give it to him. I feel that it's very harsh that people just. I'm not saying you can't dine off the past forever, but to just completely expunge what he did over the last 18 months through parts of this season, I find it completely baffling. When it's okay to pay Dak Prescott 60 million for achieving nothing in the playoffs, but remember what he's done in the regular season, which doesn't count as much. And it's okay for Lamar, who's also done nothing in the playoffs, but done the same as Dak during the regular season. But yet, Joe Burrow's living off one sort of Super Bowl run, and some good performances, in certain games. And so I'm not comparing Purdy to those players' abilities. I'm just saying that if you're going to play fair all round. Don't just cherry pick the narratives that suit your agenda, because the bottom line is there's 4 or 5 quarterbacks that deserve 50 to 60 million, and probably the rest of them, the tier 2 ones, all deserve Baker Mayfield's 35 million. If you want to be brutal about it, that is the truth. Is that, look, top of the market should always be Mahomes. Just reality. If the problem that you've got is that if the weird part about the NFL as opposed to football, so you'd never get a team at the bottom of the Premier League paying a striker £1 million a week for him to play for the club, because one, they don't have the money, hence why they're at the bottom, and two, the player wouldn't even be at the club. If they had that much talent, they would already be at the top club. So the problem that you've got with American football is that you've got clubs that have got the money to pay the same money as Kansas City. So, Jacksonville can pay 60 million, or Dallas, when they're struggling, can pay 60 million. Basically, anybody can pay 60 million a year for a quarterback. Well, in other sports, it would only be Kansas City, being the current number one and dominant force. They would be the ones that would be able to pay it. That's what obviously gives the sport the parity that it does, but it also warps the landscape of, well, in theory, the best of the best is meant to be the ones that get the highest amount of money. But in reality, because you've got other teams clawing to become the best, they'll overpay talent to try and climb that mountain, which then means you've got talent that are being overpaid as the market leaders, the ones that are the true talent being underpaid compared to those ones. And then people that are like Brock Purdy, that are basically the reality of the middle, being sort of criticized because they're not the top talent, but they don't, but they're not the top talent, so they can't earn as much as Mahomes, who's being underpaid compared to the lower talent, who's being overpaid because a team is trying to strive to get to the top. And it's like it's a merry-go-round of a mess, where if it was just as simple as Mahomes got 60, Purdy gets 35, Dak gets 35, Herbert gets 35, Hurts gets 35. You're Josh Allen's on 45. He shouldn't be on the same amount of money as Mahomes. He hasn't done as much. Lamar should be on 40. There should be a tier, based on what you've achieved. And it's just a mess of, like you say, it becomes messy when you've got teams that are overpaying, I would say, lesser talent to try and claw the mountain, which then distorts everything. And then when you get the level two talent that are putting in, for me, good performances, that are putting in proven performances, that are then having to scramble to try and get a comparable salary to where they should be, it's becoming a bit messy because they're not going to get the overpaid ones at the bottom because they're just almost through desperation being overpaid and overvaluing some potential. They're never going to get paid the same as the ones that are winning the Super Bowls. And so equally, you've then got the situation where you're at now. Who knows what the magic figure is for Brock Purdy? You go on this one, guys. It will involve throughout January. So I'm not biased towards Purdy, but I do feel that it's every now and again it's good to put all sides of the perspective out there. I think he's got more athleticism than people give him credit for. He can scramble, for me, pretty well. I don't know why you would compare him to Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes when there ain't many people that run as good as them. Let's be honest. Most of what Josh Allen's achieved this year has been based off his running. If it wasn't for his running, his stats would look pretty rubbish. And you look at like Patrick Mahomes, most of his highlight reel this year has basically come off his running. Just the truth, isn't it? Like I think that criticizing Purdy for this year when he's had no continuity with the receivers because his main ones have never been there. There's been a revolving door of who's fit, who's not fit. Doesn't excuse, like I say, there's been at least 3 or 4 drives where he's thrown atrocious throws and interceptions, and I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm just saying that you know I've seen plenty of others do it week in, week out, and they'll be on 40 million minimum contract, and nobody blinks an eyelid. But because it's the 49ers, and I don't know, he seems to just carry next to no credit whatsoever for getting him to the Super Bowl, performing amazingly well. And because Garoppolo did what Garoppolo did, well, that must mean that anyone who plays in the San Francisco, well, it didn't work for Trey Lance, did it? No, of course it didn't. And and the performances that he put for San Francisco, getting to that Super Bowl, come back, and then the performance in the Super Bowl, completely different to what Garoppolo did. And so comparing the two is just, if you want to compare the two, then you're conveniently forgetting his performances because you just don't want to see him. And that's not me saying, look, you could be sitting here next year and Purdy could be awful, could be, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that his performances in the playoffs for San Francisco and that season and in the Super Bowl were far better than what Garoppolo did for San Francisco. And you can look at all the stats all you like. His come from behind victories weren't based on the Avengers; they're based on him. And so, we'll see, guys. As I say, wishing you a great start to 2025. Can't believe 2025. Nuts. All those years ago when you're thinking of the millennium and 25 years already into it. All time flies, doesn't it? Anyway, guys, you have a great start to the year. Take care. Bye bye.